So it's March the 24th, another Sunday, another episode of the Long Haul Podcast. Welcome, everybody. I'm Nine. Here, as always, is Carragher.
Hey guys, what's up?
So, as always, it's been a quiet week. No signs of a patch. Been looking around Reddit. There hasn't been much on there. There hasn't been much on other websites. I think the highlight of this week, there was a supposedly maybe fake, no one knows. There was an anonymous post on 4chan or 8chan or whatever it is. Some guy supposedly being an insider at Valve. And I'm just going to quickly read it out. Valve Insider here, the game's going free to play in the next few months. Everyone is going to have all the cards. People who already purchased will receive special cosmetic versions of the cards they own, which can be sold on the market. X will likely have four different ones at varying rarity levels. Ticket play is over. There will be unranked and ranked ladders for both constructed and draft. Monetization will be through booster packs of cosmetics. Game is going to be much more customizable, and you'll be able to make custom card games. The game rules are mostly staying the same. RNG cards are getting reworks. A Hearthstone-style mulligan is being implemented. Creeps still deploy randomly, but you get to know where they will show at the start of the turn. Attack arrows are all straight, but instead of playing a card for your turn, you can now change an arrow's direction. Item shop is being completely reworked. Secret shop is gone. Your shopping phase will see 3 cards from your item. On your shopping phase, you will see 3 cards from your item deck. You can choose any consumable with a 2-turn cooldown. What are your thoughts on this post?
Okay, so the first time I read this, a lot of red flags came up for me. One of my concerns is apparently someone said that all the, for example, Overwatch leaks that came out on this site came out to be true. So that hints that this might actually be someone that might be bringing real information. Although there's things like the axe having 4 different variations, that just sounds weird because it kind of sounds like everyone has been stacking up on axes to sell them or to have more variations. I don't know. That just sounded weird. The ticket a lot of the things that he says kind of sound like fan service. People have been complaining about tickets. People have been complaining about not having enough cosmetics, about not having all the cards and having to buy new cards. A lot of the things sound like fan service and don't sound like real stuff to me. But like I said, all the leaks on this site that came from Overwatch seem to turn out to be true. So I don't know.
Strange. So why would you have 4 different versions of X? And so why would I? So let's say I have an X. Let's say that you have an X. If the game goes free to play, why should you receive a different version of X than I do? That sounds a bit unfair to begin with. So very strange. Like, if you're going to make different versions of X, then give them to everyone who already owned the card, because otherwise I'm going to feel... it's going to feel as bad when I get a shitty version of Foil X and you get a great version of New X. I don't know, whatever. That sounds very strange to me. Yeah, so the way that some of the things are written to me also sounds kind of strange. This is a Valve insider, and he says... For example, when he says creeps still deploy randomly, but you get to know where they will show at the start of the turn. It's just not well written. Okay, you're leaking something, but if you're going to leak something, then write it properly. What does this mean? I'm assuming this means as soon as the shop opens, you know where the next creeps will go.
I think the way I read it, when you're thinking where you're going to deploy your heroes, you know where the creep's going to land in the lane. Now it's going to be on one creep on the first lane and another one on the second lane. Now you're going to know exactly front of what other creeps or other heroes it's going to be.
Oh, okay. That's how you read it. That's not how I read it, but that's my point exactly. Is this is not written like someone? This is very strangely written. I'm a bit of a purist here. I don't agree with anything that changes the game mechanics. Make the game free to play, change the pictures, change ticket play, whatever. Don't change the game mechanics. That's my view of this. It sounds strange. Also, the thing of the consumables with a 2-turn cooldown, to me that seems bad, because you know what's going to happen is all the people are just going to buy fucking potions alternated with the TP scroll, so all the other items are going to be kind of pointless. So this sounds like a horrible change to me. The thing of your shopping phase showing 3 cards from your deck also sounds strange to me. Secret shop is gone. I don't. I
Yeah, that's a lot of red flags right there. I don't know why would they remove the secret shop? No one has been complaining about the secret shop. Why would you allow people to, instead of playing one card, you can actually change an arrow? I don't know. It's just weird. It's things that make no sense to me and things that people weren't complaining about.
Yeah, and some of the things that they did before, like reducing the timer, the clock timer, and some of the changes that they did pointed towards making the games a little bit faster. And this sounds a little bit like the shopping phase will take longer, because if I have to see 3 cards from my item deck, that's a third of my item deck that I get to see every turn. It sounds a bit strange. Some people had talked about making like a reroll. You could pay 1 gold to reroll the cards. I don't know. Honestly, like I said, I would just not touch anything of the game itself. I think the game is great. Change whatever else you want to change, but all the attack arrows are straight. What? I mean,
Yeah, it makes little sense.
I don't know. Like
This is their way to, or this their way, or this guy who is actually leaking the his way to stop RNG, because a lot of people complain about the arrows. Like you're gonna win the game and all your creeps and all your heroes decide to attack the same targets instead of the tower, and you lose the game because of that. People cried about that. Uh, I think this is the way everything goes straight, and if you want, you can change the arrows. That. I don't think that would work. That would be even worse than RNG for me.
No, like what happens here is, so I mean, if you're playing aggro, of course you want the arrow to always go straight. But if you're playing a control deck, or if you're trying to control the board, you often don't want the arrow to land straight. That's point number one. And point number two to me is, I'm not a game developer, but I mean, people just assume that Richard Garfield just takes ideas out of his pocket and doesn't think about them. Like, all these things were thought about. I don't know why people think that suggesting something new that hasn't been tried, or maybe it has been tried. I mean, who knows if that's how the game was before they changed it to how it currently is. It sounds very strange to me. So I tend to think this is all fake. The mulligan would be interesting too. Again, the games would be a bit longer. This would probably favor aggro, if anything, in my view. So
Why do you say the game would be longer?
yeah, because deciding mulligans is actually quite important. So it will take longer. Yeah.
Yeah, but if they gave you like a 20 or 30-second clock to decide the mulligan, that's the same time you spend on the secret shop, right? You got 30 seconds to buy the items. So having a mulligan for like 30 seconds tops isn't something that I see as a problem.
No, it's gonna make the viewer experience worse, whether you want it or not. I mean, just watching people mulligan is, for the viewer, not, it doesn't add anything. And honestly, me as a player, I rarely think, oh man, I wish I could mulligan. I just look at my hand and say, that's fine, that's fine. Let's play with what we have. You draw 2 cards a turn anyway. Yeah, I think it's like you say. It's just very suspicious. It just sounds like too much fan service. It's like everything that people were whining about. They just threw it in a post and threw it in there to see what would happen. I would be disappointed if this is true. I will be disappointed. But hey, let's see.
To be honest, there's only like one thing here that I would like to be true. The rest I don't really care about it, but the part where you get all the cards, but monetization would be about boosters with cosmetics.
Yeah, right. That doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense because of the way they designed the game initially. But if you go free to play, it would have to be something like this.
No, I mean, if you go free to play, then just go straight to the Dota 2 model where you have everything and you just buy hats. Like then just let me buy the hats that I want. Okay, they have loot boxes in Dota 2 as well, but
Yeah, but you can buy what you want from the market from the people who open the cosmetics. This way, they'll just give you loot boxes. A booster will be just a loot box.
oh boy, I hate loot boxes, man.
Yeah, I don't like them either. That's why I like the market system where you can just buy whatever you want.
Yeah, and anyway, I think that's what I have to say about this. Anything else that stands out to you?
I think we covered all the shady stuff.
Yeah, man, I don't want to spend more time on
Yeah.
this. I think this is probably just going to be fake. So moving on, I just wanted to quickly to mention that doubledraw.com, this was a website with tournament listings, is basically dead. I went there last Friday or so 2-3 days ago, and the website just disappeared. Rip. The tournament scene is lately slowly dying. We've talked about main line going down, and now the last thing is the Chronosphere Cup Invitational has not been. It's kind of been cancelled. The way they write it is it's been indefinitely postponed, so that's a major feels bad. Especially because people paid to play the qualifiers, and now they just decide to suspend it.
Rip.
It would be pretty upsetting if they just abandon Artifact and leave people hanging because people paid to play these tournaments. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I think if I'm not mistaken, people paid $20 or $25 each time they played a qualifier. So my biggest issue with what they did is not the postponing itself, because there's not a lot of players at the moment. The meta is stale, and I can understand postponing a major and wait for a bigger patch or something. My biggest problem is the PR way they did this. I mean, they just postpone it, and they didn't say until when or why. And I wasn't one of the people that paid to play qualifiers, but if I was one, I would be really upset because of no information.
Yeah, I think it's the way I see it. It's just we're just assuming we're waiting for a patch. They want to have more viewers for the final tournament, I suppose. Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to also quickly mention this week there's a new Artifact Fire article on the archetypes of aggro. So if that interests you, we'll leave the link in the show notes, or you can just head on to Artifact Fire. Otherwise, the main topic for this week and what we try to organize is kind of a small surprise this week is that we are going to have Opsy. Opsy is the creator of the Artifact Bitcoin League. He's going to join us, and we're going to have an interview with him as the main segment this week. So we hope you guys enjoy, and let's go. So we are extremely happy to have Opsy with us. Like I mentioned briefly before, Opsy is the responsible for the creation of the Artifact Bitcoin League. At the moment, the sole or practically the last standing tournament organizers, at least for limited. And hey, welcome to the Long Haul podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, we're definitely the last tournament group to be holding tournaments. I actually just finished up a blog post about that.
Oh, do you want to plug your blog on the podcast so people can know where to find it?
I'll repost it on Reddit and in the Discord. But right now it's already up on the website Artifact Bitcoin League, and you just go to the blog tab and you'll see it. It's entitled "Artifact is Dead, Long Live Artifact 2.0."
Okay, sounds enticing. Before we go to the thick of it, I thought it would be nice to know a bit about you as a person, where you're from, what you do. If you want to talk about it, just give us a background of who you are, man.
Sure, I'm from California. I do various things here and there. You could call me an event organizer. That's kind of been more what I've consistently done over the years. But I'm new to esports. Getting into esports is something I've always wanted to do because I've played played lots of video games throughout my life. Actually, like none in high school and college, but when I was like a little kid, I remember I went to like the local Blockbuster, which is like an American like video rental store.
Yeah.
Like competed in some like Nintendo 64 Donkey Kong competition. So
Oh,
that
wow.
was like my first esports thing when I was like 10 years old or something like that.
That's awesome. I didn't know that they had Donkey Kong competitions.
Yeah, man, I think I placed second too. And like the first place went to like a regional competition. And I was like, first place was also older than me by a couple of years. So it was not fair.
Was that a 1v1 thing or like a speedrun type thing or what?
Yeah, it was like a points kind of thing. Like, yeah, I don't remember exactly. You ran through the course and you had to like get all the bananas or something. But
Sweet. The N64 was my first console as well. Other than that, I just used to play at my friends' houses.
yeah, nowadays I'd say of my like adult gaming career, the thing that I played the most of is Dota, which is obviously what led me to Artifact. Though I did take a pretty good segue into Hearthstone, played quite a bit of Hearthstone. But yeah, generally I'm just chilling in California, figuring out one scheme to work on to the next, you know.
Nice.
So tell me, from a trading card perspective, before Artifact, you say you already played Hearthstone. Any other card games? Did you play any physical card game?
Oh yeah, I did play Magic when I was younger, and I still have all my Magic cards, and I have like an almost complete Urza's Legacy set. But yeah, no, I never really got seriously into it because I was only like a little kid, you know. I didn't have money to buy a lot of packs and stuff like that.
There's a few gems in there. You might make some money if you wanna sell it.
Yeah, that's what I heard, but I don't know. It's just sitting there in storage right now. You know, I'll crack it open in maybe another couple of years or something. See what's in there.
Sweet.
Kind of busy right now.
All right. So let's jump into Artifact. How long have you been following the game? Were you in the beta, or were you just like a random dancing monkey, or?
I definitely was not in the beta. I wish I was in the beta because I would have started Artifact Bitcoin League during the beta, and I think, you know, we would be much better off. Like ABL would be much better off had we started during the beta. But yeah, no, I didn't get a beta key. I was kind of busy during that whole year, and like this last year, 2018. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, I can't wait for this Artifact to come out. You know, I hear all this hype about it. I'm going to play it when it comes out, and it's going to be great. And when it came out, I was like, where's all the tournaments, yo? You know, like I kind of just want to play some casual tournaments, but it didn't really seem like there was much of a tournament scene. So I decided to create my own little tournament group.
Yeah, I think the game did suffer a bit from just having invitational only tournaments at the beginning.
Yeah. And so I kind of have a business background, so I kind of planned it. I was like, all right, well, I'll plan to do this for a year, you know, and that's how I budgeted out, you know, what I was planning on doing. And that's why, you know, we're the only group left, is because I was thinking, well, I'll run this for at least a year, you know, without really thoughts of making money either. I was like, hey, if I become a Twitch partner, then that will increase my e-peen, my e-cred, you know, and that's enough.
So was this just, it wasn't clear to me, was this something that before the game was out you had already this plan, or just as the game came out and you could not find the tournaments, you thought, oh yeah, this is something I can do, and you just took it upon yourself to do it?
Definitely was not the plan beforehand. I had always, for a couple of years now, I've been thinking about doing an esports thing, and I had been thinking about running an Artifact, trying to do an Artifact tournament or something like that. But because I didn't have access to the beta, and because I was really busy in 2018, I didn't have any like concrete plans. But basically, I played for the first couple of weeks, and I went infinite in the Phantom Draft, and I was like, this is pretty easy, you know, like it's kind of boring. Let me see if I can make this a little bit more interesting. Oh, I should mention a game that I played a lot of was EVE Online. Are you familiar with that game?
Oh, the classics.
Yeah, so EVE Online is famous for metagaming, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna metagame this now. Like playing Artifact is the least important part of metagaming. Like you gotta. It's all about what you do outside the game that's more important.
And I think it was the first MMO that you were able to, by playing the game, pay it by itself, right?
I don't know if it was the first one, but yeah, you certainly can do that. Yeah, it's the only MMO I ever played, so I never played WoW or anything like that. So
Okay, so for people who still play the game but aren't familiar with ABL, all the tournaments that happen in ABL are in draft mode. Would you like to tell us about why only draft mode?
because I played a lot of Hearthstone, and I find the constructed mode in Hearthstone to be very stale, and I fear that if I do constructed in Artifact, I'll end up with a very stale tournaments. Like right now we're doing hourly lobbies, so we're hosting 480 tournaments per month, and 480 tournaments of constructed per month every hour might get a little boring. So I think the draft is probably a better way to keep it a little bit fresher.
Yeah, I tend to agree personally. I've taken part in a lot of ABL games, and I do think that in general draft is easier to jump into, and since every draft kind of tells a different story, it tends to be less repetitive. That's my view.
Yeah, and also, like one of the things that I hate about Hearthstone is buying cards, like because basically you're buying dust, and I find that so insulting that I spend like $100 and basically what I'm getting is dust, and I didn't want to, like force all these new players, because basically ABL was meant to be for casual play, like $2,000 tournament. Like WePlay had like their $10,000 tournament and these other $10,000 tournaments. And, I figured, okay, well at 2,000, we're small fries. We're more for casuals. You don't need to spend $300 to buy a whole collection in order to compete. You just need to spend the $20 to get the game, and then you can play infinite, draft. Like
Yeah.
in Hearthstone, I really liked Arena. Like I would basically just play ranked to get gold to have enough money for Arena, and then I would try to go infinite in Arena and constantly fail.
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess I'm not very good at Hearthstone.
But going back to that to what you just said, that you were hoping to be the casual league, it doesn't seem to me like that's exactly what happened, because it seems to me like you kind of ended up attracting all the grinders and even some of the pros, right?
Yeah, well, that's the situation. Basically, is that there isn't really any money in Artifact right now. Valve announced that they were going to have this $1 million tournament that was supposed to have already happened, basically.
Yeah.
And that they were going to do something like $10,000 tournaments every week or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think a lot of groups were intimidated by that. Like the established esports groups were like, well, how are you going to compete against the Valve tournaments? And so they didn't really step up. And then, I figured, man, I'm not going to be able to win any of these $10,000 tournaments or anything like that. I'm a pretty casual player. I only made it to Legend in Hearthstone once, with Odd Paladin. But it ended up being that basically there wasn't much going on. So, and if you want to be a professional player, you kind of have to play.
Yeah.
And if you're going to play, you might as well play for money. And if we're the only people who's offering money at the time, you kind of have to play.
So you started low, but you kind of ended up rising to the top because you were the sole option for people who wanted to play a bit of a competitive. I think all of these topics kind of tie in together with the way that Artifact came out and what ended up happening. over time, basically. I mean, the game's been now out for, let's say, 4 months, essentially. What's your opinion on what's happened over time? How did you follow this progression, being a tournament organizer, putting your money on the line? How did you see this evolution and this progression and up until now?
Well, I didn't really mind the initial player drop. I figured that was going to happen. I really don't. I didn't really place like great expectations on ABL. I find that expectations in life generally just lead to disappointment. So I was kind of like, let's just see where this goes. I really don't like how Valve has just gone silent. But in my blog post, I kind of write about how the silence is actually kind of good at the moment, trying to understand what's going on inside Valve from an outside perspective.
And how do you feel that this is going to develop from now on? I mean, like you just said, we don't know anything. We just know it's a big company with in my opinion, decent game where everything around it failed. How do you see the game progressing over the rest of this year and maybe into next year? How do you think things are going to progress?
It's hard to say. Basically, I think that Valve is going to take their sweet time to basically do a relaunch of the game. I think they realize that nothing they do that's small is going to really bring back the player numbers to where they want it to be. They had much grander designs for Artifact than having like 500 concurrent players at any time. So they're back to the drawing board, and I think their silence is representative of the fact that they don't really know themselves where they're going. They got rid of Richard Garfield, and I actually think that's a good thing. I was thinking about this, and I think it's a good thing that they got rid of Richard Garfield, and that they're trying to lead the development. They're trying to lead the development through their own style now.
So why exactly do you think it was a good thing? Can you develop a bit?
Well, I go into the blog post, but I think like really a key turning point or a keystone moment in these few months was the axe nerf, the card nerfs, and then the buyback.
Yeah.
And I think that was done very poorly. I think like whoever made that decision probably got fired. I think it was probably Richard Garfield who pushed for the buyback because...
You think?
I think so, because they come from Magic, from printed cards, and they really wanted to make the market something that was like special. But I think that just Richard Garfield just doesn't understand like digital gaming as well as say the largest game software distributor in the world, and also the organizers and developers of two of the best esports games ever. It's just...
So you think it was a tug of war between Garfield and Valve trying to figure out where the middle ground was, kind of?
Yeah, and I think basically Valve realized that like Garfield probably had some good ideas about doing infinite, doing like the tri-lane, doing unlimited amount of units, stuff like that. But then in terms of how to actually deliver it to the community, I think Richard Garfield and the Three Donkeys probably have very little qualification to tell Valve what to do. And I think Valve realized that and basically told them, we're not going to pay you anymore. So
yeah. I mean, we're at a very interesting point in the game right now. Let's see. Talking to you yesterday, you had the feeling that at least until the summer, we're not going to see any updates. Maybe around TI in China this year, maybe something will come out. Hopefully they don't present it to the crowd, because probably the reaction will not be great, I guess.
I mean, yeah, I don't know how they'll handle it, but I wouldn't expect anything for at least another month or two. They might want to capture that summer that summer boost, when people get out of school and have more free time to play.
Sure.
Like generally winter and summer is when people play more, because winter people stay indoors and then summer school's out. So I don't really think trying for a rushed relaunch during the spring really makes any sense. Yeah.
And they'll have all the focus on the Dota tournament.
Yeah. So going back to the ABL topic, you had this idea. You thought you might provide to the casual players. How did you manage to implement this? Assuming you didn't have a major connections or a huge network to gather people from. How did you manage to find admins? I don't suppose you have any sponsors, but how did you go about organizing all those things? Was it a pain in the ass, or how did they go?
You just talk to people, when I first started ABL, I was home and it was like holiday time. So I had lots of time. I was like streaming for like 50 hours a day and hosting a couple of tournaments per day, like $5, $20 tournaments. And, people came in and we chatted and hung out, and, people want to do the tournaments. Like, that's why I bought Artifact, is I wanted to play tournaments, and I wanted to play draft tournaments, something that you can't do in Hearthstone. And, the first season, I kind of went the more traditional route with a more traditional kind of tournament with like invites and some qualifiers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought in, a decent number of interest and people into the Discord server. And I kind of, that basically the first season was more like 6 to 7 weeks. So, you meet a lot of people during that time. And also that was when Artifact was a bit more popular, right? So if you just have a stream, people will show up. And, I managed to invite a lot of the pro players, and I didn't expect a lot of them to accept the invites, but they did. And so that definitely brought a lot of credibility and interest to ABL.
For sure.
But the invites, man, let me tell you, invites are a huge headache to deal with. So that's why right now there's no invites for ABL, because it's just too much work for me right now. I'm kind of busy.
Yeah, I wanted to say you have the main event coming up next week, and I wanted precisely to touch on that point. There will be no invites, if I understood it correctly.
Correct. Yeah, there's no invites. I don't really see a point for invites. Like, basically, if you look at the big tournaments, right, that did like 10K or whatever, right, they invited all the big players. They invited all the big names, right? But they still couldn't get the viewership to maintain kind of like a professional and ongoing tournament, right? So I kind of looked at that, okay, so why am I going to try to follow their model when they're kind of they're established groups, they know what they're doing. They have the infrastructure behind what they want to do. They can do it cheaper than me because they have, they already have their workflows and systems and people in place. So why compete against them, right?
Yeah. Any plans or anything that you're hoping to change for upcoming seasons?
Yeah, I'm thinking about changing the invite thing, because I definitely think that having some, like pro players or whatever come into play would be better. It would maybe chairs, but then it's also, like I said, ABL is always meant for casual players, So I feel like, okay, well, if I invite like 8 of the top players in the world, it kind of, like, for me, like personally, if I was, was looking at that, I'd be like, well, man, I'm not going to win, like, why am I going to bother playing,
Yeah. So we're talking about other organizations, like We Play, Mainline, and now Chronosphere. This week's biggest news was the Chronosphere Major postponed. I'm sure you know about this by now.
Yeah.
All the people who play this now. So what I wanted to ask you is, what's your take on the way they did it? by this I mean the way the PR that was done about it. We already talked about this a little bit when on the first part of the podcast, but I'd like to know what's your take on this one.
I mean, it's an interesting kind of financial thing that they kind of try to do, which is basically they try to have, they try to hit that $10,000 mark, right? By basically doing entry fees and stuff like that, which I don't know. It's kind of, I don't really feel like that's like traditionally how esports is, like I feel like that's more like a poker model. And then if you're doing that, then it's like you're basically gambling. And I don't know, like I enjoy a bit of gambling myself, here and there, but I tend to confine that to the casinos.
Yeah.
Like I really dislike loot boxes and all that stuff in games. Like I really don't want ABL to be like gambling, and like I'm never going to accept any gambling sponsors or anything like that because I just don't think it has a place in gaming.
I just feel like they kind of cheated out the community because people were paying like $20 to play qualifiers. They qualified. They were hoping for the big prize, the big tournament, and then they just postponed it with no information, no feedback, we will launch this when a new patch comes or when on this date. And I just feel like whoever decided this did just tweet like this is ugh.
Well, what I thought was weird was I read their post about how they were committed to finishing it out, right? And I think their problem was that basically, I saw their registration page, right? And it was like 85 spots left or something, for a 128 person tournament. And I think a bunch of people had already qualified. So I think basically nobody was signing up to play. And I think what they should have done is just canceled the LAN aspect of it and just moved it to online. And that would have greatly expanded the number of players who can play, because honestly, just to support them, I would have kicked down $50 to try my luck and play online. If I was back home in California, I definitely would have flown out to Denver to play for a weekend and just, meet some other Artifact people, because why not? But I don't think that how they handled their cancellation was good, especially since they kind of just stealth canceled it. Like I was talking to a player about possibly sponsoring them to go to Chronosphere Cup to kind of help out Chronosphere Cup and maybe promote ABL a little bit, if my player won. but then we're like, okay, let's check the details. And then we checked the website and we realized that it was canceled. And we were like, oh crap. Like I was talking to DPM actually, right? So she made the huge Reddit post about it being canceled. And I really think that they dropped the ball on that one. I think they've lost a lot of credibility, and like if they don't refund everybody, like then I think that that's pretty shady in general. Like they basically need to take a financial hit, otherwise they're just being greedy.
Very messy.
I mean,
okay, so go ahead.
Every time you try to host an event, like one of the reasons why ABL is, I plan for it to be only online is because it's cheaper. Your overhead is way, way lower. And for me, not doing esports things before and dipping my toes into it, I figured, well, limiting my costs is a good way to do it. And if there's a problem or something like that, then it doesn't really cost me as much. And I think Chronosphere Cup or Nerd Street Gamers basically took on a lot of responsibility, and then basically chickened out and said, oh, well, we actually don't want to, invest money into Artifact. We just wanted to, make money off of Artifact. And, it shows now, because basically when they're just on the cusp of being able to contribute something to the community, they, pulled the rug under it and just indefinitely postponed instead of saying canceled and sorry, we'll offer refunds and stuff like that,
A lot of companies, I guess, were drawn to the fact it was a Valve game, and they didn't even know, they were not even prepared. They had not even considered the possibility the game might not just take off and be a huge success, I guess.
Well, I think that the Chronosphere Cup model is possible. I think I was surprised when I first heard that they filled a couple of lobbies at $20 an entry for the qualifiers.
Yeah, I was one of them.
Yeah. And, I think it's possible. It's just that for some reason they were like, we're going to have a LAN, and just LANs are really expensive. I've done events, I've done fairly large events, and not esports events, but just like music events and other things. And having an in-person event is expensive. So I don't know. I don't really know what they were thinking with that. Like, they should have tried to do an online only first, maybe smaller, test the waters, because they were saying something like they wanted to provide an opportunity for people to compete, for professional players to compete. And really, we live in the internet age, man. Like, we don't need to go to a certain place to compete, dude. Like, you just determine who's the best in the world, using the internet, I don't know.
So, man, imagine you're our Lord and Savior, Gaben. If you could change one thing in the game right now, like just right this moment, what would you do? What do you think would be the most important thing to change right now?
That's a good question. I just feel like they need more cards. They just need to release more cards. Like, they can adjust the system in the future, but for now, just to keep the players going, like, they should just release cards.
All right. I would like to thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, no problem.
Wanted to ask if you want to, plug in some people that have helped you, or your website, or if there anything you want to say and plug in, be my guest.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, ABL right now is basically run by volunteers, like, completely. Like, one, I'm a volunteer, but I've been really busy, and like, I was putting in 50 hours at first, but now it's more like 10 to 20 per week. And some of the admins who have been around from the beginning, like Bad, and AK, Base Emery, and DPM Malicious, and Artifan, who's our like man in China. I'm forgetting one more I know right now. Oh, Cat of the Year has been our tech guy, and he set up our automated board, and he's been awesome and helping out a lot. And to all the other admins who have been hosting slots, they're really the ones who are keeping ABL alive.
Indeed. So, with that, I think we will close the interview. It was a pleasure to have you, man. We wish for the best for the ABL, as well as for the future of Artifact. But thank you so much for everything you've done, and we hope that you'll have success with the ABL in the future.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be around for at least a year, man. That's my plan. ABL will run for at least 1 year, so we'll see what happens.
Sweet.
Okay, so I think for this week we've tackled all the topics, and after this interview with Opsy, I hope you guys enjoy it. It was really cool of him. To mention that we got mentioned on redmist.gg. They're currently putting up our episodes when we release it, thanks to them. And I guess if anyone is interested, they're hiring developers. So if anyone who listens is interested, just drop by our Discord, where you can find people from Red Mist.
Or alternatively, you can also find their own Discord link on their website, but you're welcome to come by our Discord. There's usually a developer from them on there, or otherwise we can direct you to them. As we mentioned briefly during the interview, the Chronosphere Cup LAN finals have been cancelled. The ABL, so the Artifact Bitcoin League final tournament, will be next weekend. If you're in the top 128, I believe, you are invited, so go for that. And as usual, I just wanted to mention that we're available in most directories where good podcasts are found, and as well as on YouTube right now. So if you like the cast, go ahead, leave us a review, join our Discord. We'll post the link on the show notes. And otherwise, if you are in our Discord, we would be happy to hear from you, your suggestions, your feedback, or eventually if you want to pop in occasionally in our Discord and chat about a specific topic with us on the podcast, we're happy to do that as well. As always, guys, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week, right? Bye.
Yeah. See you guys next week.